Hello students. In our last lecture we have studied the short stories. Now it is time to go on to our next unit, that is the unit number 3, which deals with the novel. As we have seen the American literature, literary background, at the same time their literary history. And if we go through the American literature, the terms and the concepts that are related and moreover concerned are repeatedly occurring in American literature, it is bound to study the literary text that are available and that are prescribed by the University of Mumbai. So let us go through the novel. Some introductory part of the novel that we need to study is The Old Man and the Sea. Ernest Hemingway, he American writer, novelist, short story writer. We have to something about go through the Ernest Hemingway first, whom you can check on the internet. See, Ernest Hemingway was born in Oak Park, Illinois on July 21, 1899. His father was a doctor. Much of his time he spent in roaming around the woods with a rifle on his shoulder, fishing in the large lake. His family owned a cottage on a lake, so he used to spend hours of the night in the makeshift cot as he lay reading. So he graduated from the Oak Park High School toward the bottom of his class. Meanwhile, the war had broken in Europe in 1970 or 14. We have seen. Frustrated, he was frustrated. He tried to enlist in the army, but he could not. So he liked the writing job, still had a compelling urge to go into the war, and that came finally when he was again went and registered himself. See, his body was filled with waste when he was recruited in the war. His body was filled with 250 pieces of shrapnel, and he was unconscious. But he was rescued. But when he was turning to help others, he was again shot in the left leg. But he survived. He was admitted in a Red Cross hospital, and several weeks, means almost for 2 years, Ernest Hemingway was hospitalized. And there, while he stayed in the hospital, there was an English nurse called Agnes, and she fell in love, or he fell in love with her. While he was in Europe, he received several medals for the bravery. He limped on his leg, but he went back to America as a different person. After experiencing war, death, suffering, new people, new language, the language of the war, battlefield, and his love affair that had come. But finally, we have seen Agnes, she was never ready to go to America, and she had married an Italian army major So he was very much disappointed in the love. So these initial failures in love might have turned him into a great author. He was sad and disappointed. Hemingway went on to Paris to study and make a living out of writing. He met and became friend with the greatest literary figures of the day, James Joyce, Gertrude Stein, Ezra Pound, and others. He was very much influenced by Ezra Pound. Manuscripts after manuscripts kept coming back from the editors. He never seen such a kind of single encouragement. One day he was sitting at the sidewalk cafe. The friend observed that he had not suffered a lot. His friend told him, and that is what to be a great writer is, to suffer a lot. I have known your misery. So what do you think? Your misery, your pain should reflect in your writing. And that was what his friend has suggested. And that he put on this in the form of a novel, A Farewell to Arms. The book immensely popular, and that was the beginning of his literary career. He went on writing while he was a reporter in Spanish, Spanish city, a Spanish civil war. He covered through his newspaper, and he was he could not write, but his reporting was good one. He participated later on in the Second World War in a submarine, and after the war he retired to Cuba to fish and to write. His critics remarked that Papa's career is over in 1942, but then in 1952, after the years of work, he brought a small book novel, The Old Man and the Sea, the tale of a struggle of a single old fisherman against the power of fate and ocean, against the power of nature, and it was the story that he had been trying to write all his life. The story had brought him the Pulitzer Prize in 1953. And immediately after the Pulitzer Prize, this single short bit of novel, a novella, won him the Nobel Prize in the subsequent next year. While hunting wild Africa, he got plane crashes. He could not go to Sweden to receive the Nobel Prize in the Academy. His loneliness, still living in Cuba that time, he continued to write short stories and novels and magazine articles. And he is growing old. He, while staying in Cuba, spent few months in the hospital, began losing weight, and saw his creative ability is declining. Early in the morning in July 1961, he slipped one of the stairs of his home, and not wishing to prolong his suffering, killed himself with a gun. Like an old fisherman, he had no luck anymore. But his life is an adventurous life. Through adventures after adventures, he told stories of his life and love. He wrote early stories. Influenced by Ezra Pound and George Strain, Hemingway published 3 stories, 10 poems. At the same time, The Greatest Old Man and the Sea, The Torrents of Spring, which appeared in 1926. The first great novel, The Sun Also Rises. It shows his style and attitude, moral collapse of a group of expatriate Americans and fishermen. The Farewell to Arms is also one of the poignant short story, love story of an American ambulance lieutenant during the war. More short stories and books were written by him, like Men Without Women, Death in the Afternoon, which appeared in 1932, Green Hills of Africa. It's a big game hunting with a little bit digression on the literary matters to have and have not. He sometimes showed the solution for the social problems. For Whom the Bell Tolls is the longest novel based on a Spanish Civil War, has a universal thesis and loss of liberty. Across the river and into the trees, that appeared in 1950. With The Old Man and the Sea, a parable of a man against nature, against the powers of a wild sea. Hemingway has recaptured his reputation with the award that is Nobel Prize for Literature. In The Old Man and the Sea, the story is about the old man and the story is about the sea. So the title of the novel is suitable. There are few characters, or only 2 characters in the real sense. Santiago is the old man, the hero of the novel, or we can say he is aged 50 or age 60, above 60, is struggling making some living out of fishing. So he stands for adventurous life. It's typically a code hero. There is a 14-year-old boy who works in nearby restaurant and brings him the food for 84th day. And so since last 84th day he is bringing him food and beer. He is always praising this old man that there is only one like you, the fisherman, the best fisherman. There are few mentions to the animal world, means marlin fish. There is a bird, so many birds that hovers over the sea, dolphin. Few characters, few figures have been mentioned. DiMaggio, the football player. There is also a symbolical dream sequences that we see in African lands on the yellow beach of Africa. So we find these few characters that are mentioned. म्हणून हे कॅरेक्टर्स आपण लक्षात ठेवायचे जेणेकरून आपल्याला या स्टोरीमध्ये आपल्याला हे लक्षात घेता येते. थँक्यू.